there have been enormous amount of legal experts suggesting their surprise of the outcome and the ruling of the arbitration, suggesting it is so much sweepingly in favor of the Philippines, very unusual in any international arbitration ruling. Professor Zhu, now when you think about it, what about the legalities and the jurisdictions, once again, of this arbitration?
My assumption is this. This tribunal has no jurisdiction at all. We can also just come to this conclusion from the different angles. First, we see it's a relatively tentative setting under the UNCLOS. But the problem is, it does not just have a very good representation in terms of its composition. The second, I think this tribunal also very remarkably abused the judicial power. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a crossing line. They also become some sort of a radicalizing their some sort of a job. Then last one is, I think what they thought of their job, they're a god, they're truly just a savior to some sort of a very sunny and challenging questions in Asia. They're most of them European. Yes, they're well-established, legalists, but the problem is, given their quite thinner, the expertise on Asian affairs, how can they take themselves as a savior of some sort of such a long, lingering, daunting South China Sea territorial disputes? Putting all things together, I have to say, just this tribunal totally has no jurisdiction at all.
Senior Captain Zhang, you're a military man. From your perspective, how do you see this arbitration ruling?
Well, I don't think the arbitral tribunal has the jurisdiction over this case, and also it actually deprives China of its right to choose on its own the dispute settlement regime. So, and this will provoke tensions in this region. And we know that already the United States is sending its warships and airplanes to this area and to intimidate China into submission. So after this, we don't know what the United States will do. So this is maybe the point which we are not sure of.
Well, both of you are challenging the legalities and also the evidence this arbitration has toward its ruling. There are also others who are trying to find out the nature of it. On Wednesday, for example, the United Nations declared through its social media site that it had nothing to do with the tribunal, which was established in the year 1899. Meanwhile, at a press conference after the white papers released from China, the Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Liu Zhenmin expressed further doubt.
The miserable thing is the tribunal took the advice of one witness without any investigation. Who is supporting them? They offer paid service. Who is paying them? The Philippines or even other countries. The system is completely different from that of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea.
Is it paid service, or this is an arbitration that should be really legally respected? Professor Zhu.
Of course, there's a lot of doubt for how those arbiters personally benefit from this case. But unfortunately, so far, I have no evidence at all. There's a very competing arguments. Someone says they are officially paid by some sort of a UN organizations. Then someone say they will take charge of from some sort of such a legal service as an arbiter to, dispute the parties. All of such a choice should be further, clarified before we can come to a very, very sound, adequate conclusion. But the problem is, I'm also very suspected of a real motive behind some sort of such a extremely biased and just the Philippine tilting, and just you say the overwhelmingly unfavorable to China's award just come over. So what kind of things just got those arbiters we say, goes that farther to cast there some sort of a repercussion and a reputation and taking very one-sided, the conclusion.
Right.
So I'm a very doubtful of that.
Senior Captain Zhang, there are a lot of questions by legal experts since the award was issued about the ramification of this specific issue and the ruling, what it would mean for other territorial disputes around the world, what it would mean for the credibility of international arbitration, whether it is this specific organization or other ones related much more closely to the UN. What do you make of it?
Well, I think first, the arbitration or the award of this arbitration will certainly damage the authority of such kind of tribunals in the future, because they have set a very bad example to ignore the legal rights of China, and they have taken a biased position toward China. And they ignore the China's position that we will not take part in such tribunal and also the arbitration. And we have made announcement before this.
But Senior Captain Zhang, when you and Professor Zhu are suggesting it is unfair, it is not according to the truth. So what exactly is the truth from the Chinese side? Senior Captain Zhang, what evidence, if you can very briefly to suggest to our international audience through our program, does China have in hand that could firmly confirm China's position that there is no such thing as territorial disputes even in this area, because China has been exercising sovereignty over the area in history? What kind of firm evidence do you have in your hand when you are making all of these statements?
Well, I think we have sufficient evidence that can prove that China has...
Give some examples.
This evidence includes books, documents, and also some books, maps in the old times, including those maps and books from the United States, Japan, and European countries, which explicitly mark that these islands, some of the islands, especially in the Spratly Island, in the Nansha Islands, belong to China. And also China has conducted patrol, naval patrol in the ancient time from the Song Dynasty. That's about 907. And China took the first naval patrol on the South China Sea.
Will, Professor Zhu, historical records necessarily going to prove China's position?
Of course, I think the most convincing evidence is, we say, such a two historical documents laid out for international community to rebuild post the Second World War order. So one is we also know it's we say Kailo Declaration. Another one is we say Potsdam Declaration.
Those are two big documents for people to look into. How is it related to the topic that we are having today?
Of course, because both the Paracel Island, we say Xisha Qundao, and the Spratly Island, we say Nansha Qundao, was just occupied and conquered by the imperialist Japanese troops. So after the
During
Japan's
the Second
defeat,
World War.
yes. So then these two historical documents very clearly just declare all some sort of such territories annexed, and even just some sort of illegally just taken over by the imperialist Japan's troops should just return to Asian 15 state. So then, along with the Taiwan and the Jinmen Maju, then we will see such two islands also just legally returned to China. Then back to in 1946, I think the KMT government dispatched the freeze, and not just reclaim these two islands, but also setting some sort of very important monumental stone, the plaques in these islands, and it just very, very officially declared back to 1946. So China now just legally claim back what belonged to China from such a two islands.
All right.
It's a very conceivable and also very, very perceivable.
Of course, at this moment, we do not have 100 hours to go through all of these historical records, but I'm sure those of our audience members who are interested in history and want to find out the truth, they might want to look into many of these documents you just mentioned. Having said that, though, what is important now is not only about the award, because China already dismissed the award, suggesting not accept and not going to so-called adhere to it. So what is going to happen now? How all sides going to react to this? Not only today, not only tomorrow, but also in the short term, in a few months, for example? Professor Zhu, what do you think?
Okay, a good question. So how the different players could just respond, supposedly.
Let me narrow it down since you're
Okay.
coming from the Chinese side. So why don't I just ask you, how do you think the Chinese side would react to this?
Okay, first of all, then we will see the Chinese government come up with the three documents, two statements and one white paper.
All right.
They're all part of the package of the Chinese response. It's very, very evident. Then the Beijing not just to make clear our position, but also specify the China's claim in South China Sea. That kind of very resounding documents really is very telling the word.
Besides arguments, what about the military possibilities? That's probably the biggest question mark in many's mind. Senior Captain Zhang, Vice Foreign Minister Liu Zhenmin, when he was giving a press conference earlier in the day, he was talking about one thing, and I want to quote, China has the right to establish ADIZ, end of quote. As we remember, back in the year 2013, when another ADIZ was established in East China Sea, how much controversy it involved. So will China do that? Has the right does not necessarily equals to will, but will China do that?
Yes, you are right. First, we have the right to establish another ADIZ in the South China Sea. It's the right of a sovereign state. And also there have been precedents like this. The United States, Japan, Korea, and other countries have already established their ADIZs. The China is just following the example. Concerning the South China Sea, I don't think up to now we have made our decision to set up another ADIZ. We will do this according to the threat we are facing.
Okay, we have noticed from the Philippine side, there has been quite muted reactions. The foreign minister was talking about calm and restraint yesterday, but also you haven't heard much from the president yet. So what do you make of the current reaction? Is that going to be considered as positive from the Chinese side?
Of course it is, because it's a very interesting, sharp contrast and very remarkable difference from the President Duterte's previous administration. So I think the previous administration, Aquino III administration, usually is very emotional, hostile, and even in our words is just trying to just back up the United States and then pushing China harder and just overtaking some sort of such a maritime features in South China Sea, which originally belonged to China.
Right. Now, Professor Zhu, you have been a geopolitical expert of the region for a long time, so let me ask you this. Can the Duterte administration be able to act on its will, or the will of the country, free from, let's just say, pressures from the others, even from the United States, if I could be specific?
Good question, but it's still harder to predict how big the policy change scope will be. The Duterte government just adopting. But my hunch is this: Duterte administration truly presents some sort of their very remarkably different, the traits, different policy preference, and the policy priority as well. So then we can put the hope on some sort of very friendly action and reaction cycle. If we can show some of the Chinese goodwill, then probably we can hope in trade-off some sort of the Philippines good return.
If negotiation is still possible, as the Chinese side suggested today while releasing the white paper, Senior Captain Zhang, what is going to be the role of the Chinese military?
Well, I think China is maybe is hoping, or we are hoping that we are looking forward to the resumption of talks and negotiations with the Philippines, but not based on the arbitration. We should return to the status before the arbitration, that 2013. But in the future, I think the Chinese military will take part in the cooperation with ASEAN countries, including the Philippines. We can conduct some sort of cooperation on maritime issues, or for the maritime search and rescue, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, and also the anti-piracy operations in this area. So the Chinese military can take part all of these kind of cooperations with ASEAN countries, including the Philippines.
And finally, before we go, Professor Zhu, is this desire for peace that we have witnessed both in the Philippines and in China a product of the arbitration, or it has been the original thought from the two countries anyway? Secondly, is peace possible? Can China give peace a chance by what?
Of course, the peace now is just there in South China Sea. I don't think the things now is getting out of control. So whatever the tension is, I see quite a little intention and some sort of, strong plots on either side to reverse the status quo. But the problem is, what kind of the things we should give the hope to? We should give the chance to diplomacy. Let's elevate the diplomacy. Let's just proceed well with the diplomacy. So then the key challenge for now is under what conditions the diplomacy could reactivate it.
One sentence from you, under what condition from the Chinese side?
No condition at all. Maybe, but on the other hand, of course, let's pushing aside this very awful, tribunal awards. That would be a very good starting point.